The Aryuk Powerclaw, a colossal and highly feared Titan-grade close combat weapon mounted on Warlord class Titans, designed to grapple with enemy Titans, knights, and heavy fortifications. It generates a massive disruptive energy field that rips apart armor, bone, and machinery. It often features built-in weaponry such as a twin-linked Vulcan Mega Bolter to handle smaller infantry threats. The Powerclaw is also heavily used to rip off trophies of opposing fallen Titans after brutal and fatal victories.
Brothers and sisters of the Warhammer universe, welcome back to Tortuga's Grim Rosaline. My name is Jeff, and today we start Chapter 2 of our CHAOS Warplord Titan build. We already did all of the prep work with organizing all the pieces and washing and scrubbing all of them. Kind of boring, but very important when dealing with resin. And what better way to start off a giant build than actually getting one of the pieces that we can look at and see how everything is going to work through there and our imagination going through. And I can't think of a better way to do this than doing a full CHAOS Powerclaw build. And this one is going to be special because I've already envisioned him holding onto a trophy from a past war, which I can't wait to work on with you guys.
Wow, that's another really cool shirt.
Thank you, Brother Titanhead. And you know what? You too can own one of these amazing shirts or any of my 3 other designs and help me spread the message of my beloved daughter Rosaline by going to tortugasgrimrosaline.com and getting one of these or all of the shirts for you. But before we get on to our build, I need you to do all those YouTube thingies that you do so well. Click on like, share, subscribe. And now that that's out of the way, let's do this.
So here's a list of all the items that we'll be using throughout this project. So here's exactly what we'll be using for today's build, including safety. First thing first, you're going to want to have a mask and eye protection. No, not this. This is really cool. Will not help with your lungs or your eyes. Instead, we're going to want a respirator and goggles. Want to make sure that no resin gets into our eyes or our lungs. For cutting of the resin, you're going to want a pair of clippers and a resin model saw. When we're going through and sanding down, fine-tuning any rough areas, normally with plastic models, we always want to use one of these. No. Instead, resin is very soft. You're just going to use a regular nail file to help so you don't wind up cutting off more resin than what you need. Anytime I'm going with detailed small pieces, I always have my trusty tweezers. And dry fitting, which resin we always have to do. I always use putty to put all my pieces together, make sure everything fits. And for attaching and gluing, I have my 2 favorites, which is BSI Super Glue as well as Gorilla Glue Gel. And finally, being resin, there will be times where pieces will have spaces and gaps, and that is where I use my Vallejo plastic putty. This is my essentials for today's build. So we're going to lay out all of the pieces in this build just to make sure that we have everything and check it against the instruction manual. And we're going to also have the pieces that we printed out specially for this and the Titan head that we're going to have the Powerclaw holding as its trophy from ripping out a fallen Titan. And then it is time to get to work. We're going to start taking our clippers and piece by piece we're going to start cutting off all of the sprues, making sure that we're not cutting any pieces that we actually need to have on from the resin. And honestly, a lot of these pieces I will compare on the directions just to make sure I'm not cutting off anything that I'm not supposed to be. I have on my first build unluckily done that a couple times and had to do some modding. And you're going to see while I'm doing this, most of the smaller sprues and even medium-sized sprues, you can use clippers as long as you are careful and cutting through. You will be able to cut these off without doing any sort of damage or harm to the actual pieces. It's only the larger size ones you're going to probably want to use that resin saw on just to make sure that everything comes out nice and smooth. And yes, I like to try to keep all of my stuff as organized as possible, especially when I'm working on big projects. So when I'm cutting things off, I'll put them back into a similar pile that are used just so I know where everything is while we're getting ready for the next step. Now that we've cut off all the sprues from all the pieces, we're going to follow back through with our nail file. We're going to go over all the areas, and we're just going to lightly use that nail file on them to make sure there's no jagged or rough spots, or that any sprue areas are left on the pieces. Resin is very soft, and you're going to find you don't have to put a lot of effort into sanding off like you would with plastic. Now that everything's been filed down, it's time that we go on to one of the next steps, which is extremely important, and that is dry fitting all of your pieces together before we start gluing anything. And I can't say this enough, especially when you're dealing with resin models, you have to dry fit everything. Resin has a tendency when they come out of the mold that some of the pieces will warp. Even some of the thicker pieces tend to warp here and there. So it's always important that we take the time to dry fit everything together to make sure that everything fits properly before we start getting ready to glue anything. The other thing that we need to consider, especially when you're dealing with intricate piece models, is the posing that we're going to be doing. A lot of our plastic or Warhammer models, it's just the pose or moving maybe some arms around. But with these larger, especially Titan builds or anything along those lines, everything can be modified to the pose that you want it to be. So for instance here, I'm going to have this power claw holding a Titan head that it ripped out of a fallen Titan. So you're going to be seeing me constantly placing the Titan head into the palm, arranging the fingers around the head and how I want it to fit and look. And through my dry fitting rent, you can already see that I've started super gluing a lot of the armor pieces onto the main palm of the hand. Super glue is awesome. Can be sometimes unforgiving. Only takes about 5 to 10 seconds for something to fully pretty much lock in when you're putting these together. Also, you're going to be noticing while I'm super gluing, I'm usually taking a paper towel almost instantly and making sure that I don't have any overflow of the super glue. Super glue will dry and you will see clumps of it if you're not careful. Or the fun times that you'll see throughout these videos where I accidentally put super glue on my fingers, not paying attention, pressing pieces together, and then literally having to pull my finger off of the resin. And you can see now as we're attaching the piping and the exhaust of super glue that I am taking the time to just recheck everything, putting it on before I put the glue on just to make sure everything lines up perfectly. With the main hand section done, it's now time to focus on the fingers and the thumb so that we can get that pose exactly how we want it with the Titan head. So you can see I'm laying out all of the finger pieces to figure out how each knuckle section is going to have to be posed in order to get this exactly how I want this to look. So we can see here as I am doing the pose of the thumb that I find that my fabricated thumb claw doesn't actually fit into the joint on the thumb knuckle itself. So what I had to do here is I had to take my snippers and just modify that middle knuckle piece on the thumb and was able to get that to fit in properly so that I could put that thumb blade in. After some modifying and a little bit of sanding, it's fitting in nicely and everything is looking great. So I'm going to put the head back into the hand and I'm going to start dry fitting the fingers around to make it the easiest way. And my hope is that I can move the head in and out of the hand in order to paint this without causing too many issues. So I figured the best way to start this positioning would be to work on the thumb. With the head rested against the palm, moving the thumb around to the position I want the head to rest in, I think would help make it easier to get the other 4 fingers wrapped in the position I would want them to be in. So with a little bit of trial and error, I was able to get the thumb into the exact position I wanted with the thumb blade, and I was able to glue them into place. And now it's on to the rest of the fingers and all the fun that's going to ensue. As you can see, I started trying to go through and I was running into a little bit of difficulties thinking that I could try to set all 4 fingers at the same time. So what I decided to start doing is going knuckle by knuckle, dry fitting each one of them. And I went from index finger all the way down to the pinky with the first knuckle, got them to fit against the helmet, and then glued each one in. Now that each of those initial knuckles are in, I was able to put on the second set of knuckles much easier and get them to start to wrap around the helmet and still make sure that the helmet could be snug yet moved around without too much issue. And when I was satisfied with how those second set of knuckles were looking, I started gluing each one of those ones in one at a time, and then testing it one more time to make sure everything was looking great. With all 4 fingers in place, it's time to flip the hand over and put the pistons into each of the finger spots. So I'm going to take my tweezers with a little bit of super glue on the ball bearing and the end, and carefully place each of the pistons in the proper spot. With all the pistons set in place, it's now time to move on and try to put the twin volcano blasters in place. Now, this is where an example of a fabrication not going exactly from how I designed to fitting on the hand properly. I initially wanted to use a piece that I printed out because it looked awesome. I thought it would have fit perfectly with the theme of my CHAOS Warplord Titan. However, trying to get this on, it would not fit properly no matter how much I tried to shave around it or modify the piece. It just wouldn't fit onto the hand properly. So what I had to do is I had to wind up using the piece that came with the glove, and I will have to come up with something cool while I'm painting it when I get to that stage. With the twin volcano blasters now firmly in place, it's time to focus on the posing and the pieces to attach the wrist to what will be the Titan arm. And posing these will be how I want this to look. I want this to be the palm face up so that you can see the Titan head in the grasp of the power claw, but still see the power of the power claw itself. And with the finger blades now onto the hand, you can just see how massive this power claw is. It's literally pretty much the size, if not a little bit bigger, than my hand itself. This thing is just awesome. I can't wait to see it painted, and I really can't wait to see it on the Titan. And there you have it, our fully built CHAOS Power Claw, holding a Warlord Titan head. I hope you enjoyed this build, as getting into a complex resin build like a Warlord Titan. And I hope you'll be joining me in Chapter 2 when we start working on the legs. And like I always say, Grim for the Grim Rosaline.